HOA Karen blocked my moving truck, demanded permission, and got hauled off in cuffs. Why would anyone block a moving truck in the hottest day of the year just to prove a point? It was 3 p.m., sweat soaking through my shirt as I watched the movers haul the last of my boxes into the truck. After months of saving, packing, and waiting, today was the day I'd finally leave my toxic rental life behind and step into my first home, a modest but beautiful craftsman on Redwood Lane. Everything felt surreal. That was until I heard the screech of tires. A silver Lexus whipped into my driveway, cutting off the truck's path as it began backing out. The SUV didn't just park, it angled across both my new driveway and the sidewalk. I barely had time to react before the driver's door flew open. Out stepped a woman in a tailored beige pantsuit, her blonde bob as sharp as the judgment in her eyes. "You can't move in here," she snapped, striding toward me as if she owned the pavement beneath our feet. "Not without proper HOA authorization." I blinked. "I just bought the house. The sale cleared last week. The HOA president already signed off on." "I am the HOA now," she declared, tapping a freshly laminated ID badge clipped to her blouse. "Your move violates Article 6, Section 3. Unauthorized vehicles and noise levels exceeding HOA guidelines are subject to immediate action." "Immediate what?" I stammered. "Ma'am, the truck is leaving. We're not violating anything." Karen didn't flinch. "You didn't submit a move-in notification form. That means you're trespassing." The movers exchanged glances. One of them, Reggie, muttered, "Ladies trippin'." I tried reasoning with her, but Karen was relentless. She stood in front of the truck, arms crossed, blocking the path. She began dialing numbers on her phone, barking into it. "Yes, I need code enforcement. An illegal move-in. I have it on camera." She was live streaming. I could see her screen. Her HOA Facebook group was lighting up with hearts, angry reacts, and comments cheering her on. "Put them in their place, Karen. This couldn't be real." I stepped back and called 911, not to escalate, but to get help. This wasn't just a nuisance. She was actively interfering with my property. 10 minutes later, a patrol car arrived. An officer stepped out, calm but alert. "She's blocking our exit," I said, gesturing toward the truck. "She says we need her permission to move in." Karen didn't wait. She marched right up to the officer. "I'm the HOA president of this community, and they're illegally occupying that home. I have documents." The officer took a breath. "Ma'am, blocking a vehicle is obstruction. You need to move your car." "No," she barked. "This is my neighborhood. These people are invading. They didn't follow the rules. There's a protocol for a reason." As she continued ranting, the officer calmly turned to me. "Do you have your closing documents?" I showed him everything: title transfer, HOA correspondence, email approval from the former president, even a screenshot of my online submission. He nodded, satisfied. Then came the twist. A man stepped out from the house next door, an older gentleman with a cane and sharp eyes. "Officer," he said, "she doesn't represent our HOA. She hijacked the presidency last week after faking a vote." I was the former HOA head. Karen's head whipped around. "You were ineffective. You let people like this walk all over us." The officer looked back at the man. "Sir, are you willing to give a statement?" He nodded. "And I have emails. She's been forging documents, harassing newcomers, even threatened to tow a school volunteer last week." Karen's voice climbed an octave. "They're all lying. This is my community." But now things were unraveling fast. A second police unit pulled up. Someone had reported Karen earlier that week for harassment. As officers began checking their records, one of the movers quietly handed me a phone. "Look what I got," he whispered. It was a video from his dash cam, clearly showing Karen keying the side of the moving truck when no one was looking. Her face twisted in fury as she hissed something inaudible, dragging her keys across the paint. My blood ran cold. I showed the video to the officers. They exchanged looks, then approached Karen again. "Ma'am, please place your hands behind your back. You're being detained for property damage and obstruction." The way she screamed could have shattered glass. "You can't do this. I'm the president." But the cuffs clicked shut anyway. As she was led toward the squad car, the crowd of neighbors that had slowly gathered began whispering, some even filming. The man with the cane stepped beside me. "She's been terrorizing this street for months. You're the first person who stood up to her with proof." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. All I knew was that justice, for once, had actually showed up. But Karen wasn't done yet. Even from the back seat, she hurled threats, lawsuits, HOA takeovers, political ambitions. The officers ignored her. And so did the neighbors. The woman who once ruled the cul-de-sac with a clipboard and a scowl was now just another viral video entitled, "Exposed and Alone." What would you have done if someone like Karen tried to block your fresh start? Share your thoughts below. Was this justice or just desserts? The neighborhood buzzed with a strange electricity after Karen was taken away. The whispers grew louder, and phones stayed glued to hands. The woman who had barked orders and cited obscure HOA rules for years was now a memory in motion, one being live-streamed, clipped, and shared across the very Facebook group she had weaponized. I stood still for a moment, heart pounding, unsure whether to feel relieved or exhausted. Then I heard a gentle voice behind me. "You okay, sweetheart?" It was Mrs. DeWitt, a soft-spoken woman I had seen earlier peeking through her curtains. Now she was standing at the edge of her lawn in slippers, holding a pitcher of lemonade and two mismatched glasses. "Come sit a minute," she said, motioning toward her porch. "You look like you've just been through a hurricane." I hesitated but followed. She poured two glasses, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes warm. "She did the same thing to the Wongs," she said. "Tried to stop them from painting their shutters. Said it didn't fit neighborhood standards, then filed a fake complaint about their dog barking just to get them fined." I sipped the lemonade. It was too sweet, but comforting. "She seems obsessed with control," I muttered. "Oh, honey, Karen doesn't want control, she wants power. There's a difference." That stuck with me. While we sat, neighbors began walking over. Some I hadn't even met yet. One brought cookies. Another, a teenager, shyly handed me a USB stick. "I think my Ring camera caught her scratching your truck. If the police need another angle." I smiled gratefully. Within the hour, the scene shifted from chaos to a strange sense of community. People were talking, helping unload what little was left in the truck. The movers even stuck around to patch up a small scrape Karen's keys had left. It was surreal watching people who barely knew me offer help, encouragement, even apologies. "She made life hell here," said a woman named Simone, adjusting her baby's sun hat. "But I never thought she'd actually get arrested. People like her push just far enough to stay safe," someone else added. "Until they don't." I nodded, then remembered something. I turned to the man with the cane, Mr. Callahan, the former HOA president. "Why didn't you stop her sooner?" I asked gently, not accusatorily. He sighed, the sound heavy with regret. "We tried. A few of us did. But she's clever. She manipulated the bylaws, stacked meetings with proxies, bullied people into silence. I gave up after she accused my wife of embezzling HOA funds just because we voted against her landscaping plan. That's awful. She nearly broke this street. But maybe now people will speak up again. And maybe, I thought, that was the real victory, not just Karen being hauled off, but the fear she planted being slowly pulled out by the roots. But the calm didn't last. 2 days later, an envelope was slid under my door. No return address, but the paper smelled like strong perfume, Karen's signature scent. Inside was a typed letter, poorly formatted, with red ink annotations in the margins like a teacher grading a paper. "You may think you've won," it began, "but I have friends in higher places than you can imagine. Your little moment of glory will fade, but the HOA is forever." I laughed at first, then I felt a chill. Was she really gone? That afternoon, I received a call from Officer Vega, the officer who had cuffed her. "She made bail," he said. "But don't worry, restraining orders in motion. She can't come near you or your property." I thanked him but couldn't shake the unease. I installed more cameras, locked my gate. Karen may have lost the battle, but she wasn't the type to walk away quietly. Then came the second twist. A local journalist reached out, seen the viral video, and was digging deeper. "Did you know Karen was under investigation at her last HOA before she moved here?" she asked. "Accusations of harassment, forged documents, misuse of funds. She relocated right before the audit." My jaw clenched. "She's been doing this for years?" "Seems like it," the reporter said. "You might have helped stop her from doing it again." That night, I lay awake wondering how many other people had suffered under her obsessive need for dominance. How many had moved away, stayed silent, or given up fighting back. Not me. I sat down and started writing. A post for the neighborhood forum, but also something deeper. A warning. A truth. I moved here expecting peace. I found a war I didn't ask for. But I stood my ground, and I'm not the only one. If Karen has hurt you, speak up. This isn't just my story. It's ours. The replies came fast. She told me I couldn't host my niece's birthday party, said it lowered neighborhood value. She fined me $100 for putting a Black Lives Matter sign in my window. She stalked my teenage son, said his music was gang-related. It was horrifying and validating. The forum exploded with stories, and the tide finally turned. By the end of the week, an emergency HOA board vote was held. Karen was officially removed from any position of influence. A civil suit was launched by multiple residents, and the police began reviewing years of complaints previously dismissed as petty disputes. As for me, I planted flowers in the front yard the next morning, bright, defiant zinnias in every color. A small act of rebellion, a declaration that I was staying. Still, I couldn't help but wonder. How many Karens are out there, hiding behind rules, manipulating fear, convincing others they're untouchable? And what happens when they finally meet someone who doesn't back down? What would you have done if Karen had blocked your moving truck, tried to control your life, and punished you for not following her rules? The weeks after Karen's arrest were anything but quiet. For a time, things seemed to settle. Neighbors smiled more often. Lawns were less obsessively inspected, and people walked their dogs without fear of anonymous complaints. It was as though the whole street had taken a long breath after years of holding it in. But peace, as I'd learned, doesn't mean the storms truly passed. One afternoon, while sorting through leftover moving boxes in the garage, I noticed a black SUV slowly rolling by. It didn't stop, but it slowed enough for me to recognize the silhouette of a woman wearing dark sunglasses, hair tied back too neatly. My stomach dropped. Was it her? I shook it off. Maybe it was paranoia, but something about the chill that crept into my bones said I wasn't just imagining it. A couple of days later, I got an email from the county court. Karen was countersuing me. The charge? Defamation and emotional distress. She claimed the arrest humiliated her publicly, caused irreparable harm to her reputation, and triggered a panic disorder. I stared at the screen, mouth open. This woman blocked my driveway, keyed my truck, and tried to sabotage my move. And now she was the victim? I forwarded the email to Officer Vega and our neighborhood's new interim HOA board made up of sane, decent people like Mr. Callahan and Simone. "This is a desperate move," Simone wrote back. "We're behind you. We'll testify if needed." Despite their support, fear crept in. Lawsuits are draining, expensive, time-consuming. Karen knew that. This wasn't about winning, it was about wearing me down, making me second-guess standing up to her in the first place. But I'd come too far to quit now. My attorney, yes, I had to get one, was a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Rachel Kim. She read through Karen's filing and shook her head. "She's got nothing," Rachel said. "It's all posturing. But she's counting on you being too afraid to fight." "I'm not afraid," I lied. Rachel saw through it. "You are, and that's okay. But courage isn't about not being scared, it's about doing the hard thing anyway." In the meantime, Karen's supporters, yes, somehow she still had a few started popping up. I'd receive flyers in my mailbox with phrases like, "False accusers harm communities," and "HOA rights matter." An anonymous Reddit thread surfaced, filled with conspiracy theories about how I'd faked the video of Karen keying the truck. Others claimed I was trying to gentrify the neighborhood or that I was secretly a plant from a rival HOA. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so exhausting. One night, my doorbell rang. It was close to 9 p.m., and I wasn't expecting anyone. On the porch stood a teenage boy, nervous, shifting his weight. You're the lady from the moving truck thing, right? He asked. I nodded cautiously. He glanced over his shoulder. I probably shouldn't be here. My mom's friends with that Karen lady. But I saw something. My heart thudded. She came by a few days ago, he continued. Said she needed to check on some paperwork. She tried to get my mom to give her our ring footage. Said it would prove you attacked her. I stared at him. What did your mom say? She kicked her off our porch. He grinned. Said she was crazy. The boy handed me a folded piece of paper. She left this behind. Thought you should have it. Inside was a printed list of addresses, mine, the Callahans, Simone's, and a few others. Notes scribbled next to each in red pen. Threat, weak link, possible turncoat. I handed it to Rachel the next morning. She's building a smear campaign, she said. Classic manipulation. But she's sloppy. Rachel helped me file a protective order extension. She also reached out to the journalist who'd been covering the story. Within days, the local news station aired a second piece, this one delving into Karen's past, including HOA corruption, anonymous complaints traced back to her IP address, and an unsettling trail of targeted harassment. Karen's countersuit fell apart not long after that. The judge dismissed it, citing clear evidence of retaliatory litigation and patterned abuse of process. Rachel smirked when she read the ruling, but what hit harder was the silence that followed. Karen vanished. No car parked in strange places. No messages. No mail. The Facebook group went quiet. Her supporters withdrew. It was as if she'd dissolved into the shadows. And yet, every time I heard a car door slam outside, or saw an unfamiliar face walking by, my nerves flared. Trauma doesn't always scream, it often whispers. Months passed. I began to settle in for real. I painted the living room, planted wildflowers out front, and got to know my neighbors on more than just a wave and smile basis. Simone and I started a Saturday morning walking group, and Mr. Callahan began mentoring teens on public service. We weren't just repairing homes, we were rebuilding trust. Then, one morning, I found a small package at my door. No return address. Taped tight. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single Polaroid. Karen sitting in what looked like a courtroom hallway. Hands folded. Alone. On the back, scribbled in blue ink, "This isn't over. K." My throat tightened. But instead of fear, I felt something else. Pity. For all her bluster and cruelty, Karen was hollow. A woman so desperate for power she'd burned every bridge to feel tall. And now she was surrounded by ash. I placed the photo in my desk drawer, not to keep, but to remind myself that silence doesn't always mean peace. That people like her don't disappear. But also that truth, when it's documented and shared, is the strongest shield we have. And if she ever tried again, I'd be ready. Because now I wasn't alone. I had a community. I had the truth. And I had no intention of ever letting her win. What would you do if someone like Karen tried to weaponize the rules to destroy your peace? Would you stay silent or speak up, knowing what it might cost? Let's talk about it below. Your voice might help someone else find theirs. Spring arrived, and with it came a new rhythm to Redwood Lane. Where tension once lingered behind trimmed hedges and closed blinds, laughter now echoed on sidewalks. Children played freely again. Porch lights stayed on longer. Barbecues replaced petty rule memos, and chalk drawings took over driveways that had once been patrolled like battlefields. I had made a home here. The memory of Karen still lingered, faint, but not forgotten. Her name occasionally came up in side conversations or knowing glances. But for the most part, the community had chosen to move forward. We weren't trying to erase her, we were choosing to stop letting her define us. Until the HOA election came around. Simone, Mr. Callahan, and a few other level-headed neighbors were on the ballot, and it seemed obvious they would win. But then someone pointed out a last-minute write-in candidate had gained a suspicious number of votes. Someone going by K.J. Harding. The initials were too coincidental. The name didn't ring any bells. Rachel, still my attorney and now a close friend, helped me request access to public campaign filings. And there it was. Karen Jean Harding. She hadn't vanished. She'd just been biding her time. She hadn't even moved away, just relocated temporarily to her sister's house in the next town, while the legal heat cooled down. And now she was trying to crawl back in. I gathered our neighbors for an emergency meeting at the local library. Not out of panic but to prepare. We printed copies of the past rulings. We outlined her history. We reminded each other calmly, firmly off everything we'd endured. "She's counting on apathy," Mr. Callahan said. "She thinks we'll forget." "We can't let her infect this place again," Simone added. "We've come too far." Voting day arrived, and so did Karen. She showed up in a bright blue blazer, lips pursed in a rehearsed smile, hair curled tightly as if held together by spite alone. She even brought glossy pamphlets, "Restore order to Redwood." Order. That word again. She didn't speak to me directly. She didn't need to. But she looked at me long enough for me to feel that familiar cold fury she tried so hard to control. But this time something had changed. She wasn't scary. She looked small. By sundown, the votes were in. Simone won by a landslide. Mr. Callahan came in second. Karen didn't even break 10 votes. The room erupted in cheers. Some people cried. Others hugged. Even the teenagers, who had mostly stayed quiet through it all, gave fist pumps and shouted in victory. Karen slipped out before the applause ended. Alone. I stepped outside a few minutes later and found her sitting on the curb near her car. Her face was blank. Not angry, not shocked, just empty. She saw me, and for the first time she didn't posture, didn't threaten. She just stared. "I built this place," she said quietly, voice trembling. "No one appreciated it." I sat beside her, not close, but close enough to be human. "You built fear," I said, "and called it order." She didn't respond. "You wanted control more than you wanted community," I added. "That's why you lost." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she let out a soft, bitter laugh. "You think you won," she said, "but they'll forget. Give it a year and someone else will bend the rules and it'll all fall apart." "Maybe," I said, "but we'll deal with it. Together." She looked up at me. There was something in her eyes, regret, maybe, or just the emptiness that comes when a person realizes no amount of control can fill a hollow heart. Karen stood, brushed off her blazer, and walked to her car without another word. She didn't slam the door. She didn't peel off with tires screaming. She just drove away. And this time she didn't come back. Weeks later, the HOA bylaws were amended to include safeguards against unilateral control. Cameras were installed near the community center. A rotating board was put in place, and a resident ombudsman appointed someone to mediate future disputes with fairness and transparency. We didn't just fix the damage, you changed the system. And in some strange, ironic way, maybe Karen's tyranny had been the catalyst for our healing. That summer, I hosted the first block party Redwood Lane had seen in years. There were food trucks, live music, even a local artist painting murals with the kids. People danced. They told stories. They celebrated not just the return of peace, but the birth of something stronger. Resilience. As I watched it all unfold from my porch, sipping a cold drink and laughing with Reggie the Mover, who had filmed the infamous dashcam footage, I felt a quiet gratitude rise in my chest. Karen had tried to silence, punish, and control, but all she really did was bring us together. And isn't that the worst defeat for someone like her? So let me ask you this: when power is used to bully, control, and isolate, what wins in the end? Fear or truth? Obedience or community? Let me know your thoughts below, and if you've ever faced your own Karen, know this: you are not alone, and you do not have to stay silent.